The two changes to cost of living adjustments for Social Security that Congress is trying to make. Good article by Motley Fool here, and my man Trevor Genuine. He likes to be called Heavy Trevi. That's what I call him, Heavy Trevi. Dateline February 3, 2024, so just the other day. Some experts worry that Social Security benefits are falling behind inflation despite getting a COLA each year. Washington lawmakers have proposed changes to the COLA formula as a means of ensuring benefits keep pace with rising prices. The average worker could have received basically $3,000 more in benefits if COLAs had been calculated differently over the past decade. We're going to dive into that a little bit because we're going to show you why that might not be right. Let's see. Many retired. Let me take a drink of my top of the morning to you. Hey, First Sergeant. Good morning. Be all you can be. We do more before 9 a.m. than most people do all day. You know what I'm talking about? That black guy is like, hey, First Sergeant, at their air assault, probably Fort Campbell, 101st. Hey, First Sergeant, good morning. Man, look at this beard. I am looking good. Look at me, sharp. Yeah, ladies, you know you're loving me. You know you're loving your old buddy Josh. Sadly, I'm taken. The fellows might love me too, but the feeling's not mutual. Just FYI, I don't go that way. I mean, I can be encouraged to go that way if the price is right, you know what I'm saying? But I don't go that way. I don't understand the attraction of a man. I just don't get it, which is why I think people are born like that, because there's no way you could find a man attractive. Women are attractive. Men are just bleh, in my opinion. Of course, I am attractive. All right, let's keep going here. Josh, would you just get to the point? No, I won't get to the point. All right, so a survey by the EBRI. Yeah, EBRI. I on their email list, and today they posted something about their commitment to DEI. I'm like, oh, not you guys too. Please, EBRI, stop it. The DEI is inherently exclusionary. It's inherently racist. It drives me. It's just like critical race theory. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. Don't be racist. Rule number one in living well is not to be racist. Anyway, so 58% of retired workers worry they will have to make substantial spending cuts due to inflation. Remember, being worried and having to do it are two different things. All that matters is people's perception. Perception is reality, amigo. So you can sit here all day long and say, what are you worried about? What are you worried about? It doesn't matter. If people are worried, they're worried, man. It's just a fact. And I hate to say it, but we go to the grocery and we see the prices too. No other way around that. Naturally, rising prices have drawn attention to Social Security benefits. Specifically, while Social Security payments get an annual COLA to offset inflation, those adjustments are calculated using the CPI-W. CPI-W. And some experts see that as a problem because CPI-W measures price changes from the perspective of workers, but active workers tend to spend money differently than retired workers and then Social Security recipients. As a result, experts argue that CPI-W COLAs underestimate rising prices for seniors and that Social Security benefits are not increasing fast enough to keep pace with inflation. But there are some solutions to change all that, as I get Pablo and his brother Finnegan here. Finnegan's Wake. Finnegan's Wake. You ever heard that song, Finnegan's Wake? I like the Tossers. They do a version of Finnegan's Wake that is fantastic. On their one album from 1995. No, what was it? I can't remember. Finnegan's Wake. Finnegan? Oh, he dead? He dead? Well, good. We'll steal his shoes. To look up the Tossers' Finnegan's Wake. It's a great song. So let's see. We should calculate Social Securities using the CPIE. Interesting. In my book, which I don't think you've got, and you're making a big mistake if you haven't, and the reason you haven't got it is because I debunk inflation fears. And anytime you're debunking things that are, people don't click on positive stuff. They click on negative stuff. So I'm debunking inflation fears. And here we got right here. All right, we got CPIE. All right, so we're going to talk about this relative to what Motley Fool talks about. The Consumer Price Index for the elderly, all right, came out in about 1982. The Social Security estimates that replacing CPI-W with CPIE would increase COLAs by an average of 0.2% a year. All right, we got several bills proposing to make the change. All right, experts argue that CPIE is a better measure of inflation because more than 85% of beneficiaries are 62 and older, i.e. elderly. CPIE puts more emphasis on housing and healthcare and less emphasis on transportation, food, tuition, and beverages. All right, and they can go down here over the last 10 years. You'll say CPIE has grown more than CPI-W. 32.7% versus 30.8%. In 2024, CPIE is expected to grow at 4, CPI-W at 2. And you can see the different changes here. Now, the interesting thing is we're going to look at my book because I talked about the comparison of CPIE to CPI-U versus CPI-W. CPI-U is what we use for everything else. CPI-U is what we use. I said CPI-W is what's used for Social Security. But if you look at CPIE versus CPI-W, as I talk about in my book here, we're going to see, let me pause it so I can get the thing here real quick. Hold on just a second. Page 103, we see the average percent changes in CPIE, CPI-W, and CPI-U from 1982 to 2007. 1982 is when they first initiated the idea behind CPIE. The average for CPIE was 3.3 COLA. The average for CPI-U is 3.1, and the average for CPI-W is 3%. So not a significant change, but that's a 10% increase for sure. That's a 10% increase. Now the funny thing about CPIE, which Motley Fool references here, and I need my glasses. 1 second. Housing is nearly 47% of CPIE, where CPI-W is 39 is basically 40%. So housing increases or decreases is almost half of all of CPIE, which is odd given how many retirees actually own their house outright or on a fixed mortgage. So if you're on a fixed mortgage or you own your house outright, I guarantee your inflation isn't adjusted by almost half relative to housing. I guarantee it. It doesn't make any sense. Your property tax is small potatoes relative to everything else. It just is. I'm not saying it's not that. I got to pay property tax. But the increase in your property tax isn't anything compared to half of your overall inflation rate. That's what makes the whole CPI thing so basically dumb. It's the owner's equivalent rent, which is stupid. Anyway, CPIE, almost half of all of CPI, the increase in inflation, is relative to housing. What I do like about it is they have healthcare is about twice that for CPIE than it is for CPI-W. So that makes sense to me because as you get older, you have more healthcare for sure. Food and beverages is significantly lower for CPIE as it is for CPI-W, which makes sense to me as well, simply because once you don't have kids in the house, your household shrinks. Guess what? You don't have as much on food and beverages, 100%. Transportation is a big one. So transportation costs drop about almost by, it's not quite 50%, but about a third. So transportation for CPIE is about a third less of a component of CPI or inflation as it is for CPI-W. So again, housing cost goes up quite a bit. Healthcare cost almost double. It is double actually. And then food and transportation, and I think the other one was food, transportation, apparel is about half too. So those are three big ones. The whole thing is the whole drawback with inflation is so much contingent on housing. And here's the question they'd have to ask yourself: what if housing goes down? What happens to your inflation at that point? If a half of your cost of living is adjusted for housing and housing goes down, which this year right now we're having a drop in housing prices, what does that do to your inflation adjustments? I mean, it sounds good when the housing market is booming. It doesn't sound so good when it's not. I'm telling you right now. And as such, we have such a significantly high inflated housing cost. When that sucker starts going down out of 2024, it's going to make your inflation a whole lot less than your reality, because your reality isn't based on housing to begin with. That's why I make this whole argument in this book right here, which you should get. Oh, man. If you haven't got it, you're wrong, dude. I'm just telling you right now. Anyway, so let's keep going. As shown above, Social Security benefits would be 1.9% higher if the CPIE had been used to calculate COLAs over the last decade. In that scenario, the average retired worker would receive an additional $2,600 a year, not a year, excuse me, $2,600 in total over 10 years. So it's $260. Not a huge issue there. Not a huge issue. All right, so these guys, John Larson, I'm a fan of, and Blumenthal, the fake stolen valor. Remember Blumenthal? I'm going to Vietnam. I was in Vietnam. He was never in Vietnam. At least he did serve in the Marine Corps, but he never went to Vietnam, even though he's saying he did. So here's another one these guys want to do. They say calculate COLAs using the CPI-E and the CPI-W. All right. This says that the method would increase COLAs by an average of 0.3% per year. The only recent legislation that proposed that change is by Larson and Blumenthal. And they say we're going to do a combined whatever is higher. All right, well, I got no problem with that. So they're going to say whatever's the highest we're going to use. So if CPI-W is the highest, we'll use that, like right here. If CPI-E is the highest, we'll use that. Man, I got no problem with that either. Naturally, calculating COLAs using a higher inflation measure results in the largest possible benefit increase. Payments would be about 4.4% higher today if that method had been used, which would have given you about $3,700 total more in Social Security over the last 10 years. Social Security beneficiaries shouldn't expect COLA changes in the near future. What? Oh, it's COLA changes. Okay, gotcha. So changes to the cost of living adjustments. In terms of they're not going to change the quantification of that. The old age, OASDI, the source of Social Security benefits for retired workers, spouses, and disabled workers could be depleted within the next year. All right, that does mean, all right. So anyway, that's interesting. My preference, frankly, I'm going to talk to Andy Biggs tomorrow. We're going to do Andrew Biggs from the American Enterprise Institute is going to join us, I think around 4 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to do a live stream talking about his proposal on how to finance Social Security by getting rid of tax deferrals, which I'm a big fan of, or tax deductions. I'd like to see what he says, man. Like, how do we get increases into people's Social Security? I think you just change the bend points, frankly. You know what I'm saying? I don't like CPI as any inflation adjustment measure because it's stupid. You know, OER, owner's equivalent rent, it's the biggest component of inflation by nothing comes close, and yet it's completely silly, man. My housing costs haven't gone up relative to what CPI says simply because I have a fixed mortgage, and my mortgage is slowly getting paid down, and it's a lot slower than I hoped, but it's getting paid down. And as such, why would inflation have anything to do with my mortgage? The price of food has gone way up. The price of houses has not gone up for me because I'm already in my home. And OER, is the owner's equivalent rent, says, how much could I rent my house on the open market? Well, I'm not renting my house. I'm certainly not renting it to me, so it doesn't make any sense. And on top of that, you get a component of rent in your housing cost too, on top of OER. It's stupid. And on top of that, you got transportation, another 20%, assuming you're going to buy a new or used vehicle every year. That's stupid too. It should literally be a basket. It should be electricity. It should be food. The two biggest things, if you want to do apparel, that's fine too. Electricity, food. But a lot of people rent, not that many. And does rent change like that every year? I don't think so. It should be electricity. It should be food. That's literally what it should be, a basket of goods. How much does it cost? 1 kilowatt hour of electricity use. How much does it cost if you want to freaking use oil to heat your home? That's what CPI should be based on. Housing is not part of inflation. I'm just telling you right now. I talked about this in my book in major detail. And again, you should get it. All right, so if you're interested, so join us tomorrow. I'm hoping to get Andrew Biggs on, and we'll find out what he says, how to solidify Social Security. But the bend points, I was going to say. So the second bend point is 32%. All right, so the first bend point is you get 90% of your first $1,100 of your AIME. I'm not going to get into that here right now. 90%, that's your first bend point. The second bend point is you get 32% of the next, basically up to $5,500, something like that. And I'm not going to look at what bend points are today, but the first $1,100 you get 990 of that. The second, basically $5,500, you get 32% of that. What you do is you just increase that second bend point to 40%, and you're done. Oh, but it's too hard to do it. No, what do you think WEP is? WEP has instead of a 90% first bend point, I think it's 40%. That's what WEP, windfall elimination provision. You can easily change the bend points, dude. They did with the WEP. So what you do is you change the second bend point to give people an adjustment. Done. If you want to say, well, that's not fair because Bill Gates will then lower the third bend point, which is 15%. You can lower the third bend point to 7.5% if you want. But either way, man, you got to increase Social Security. In my opinion, increase Social Security, the benefits, and you get a funding source. For me, I love the idea of Andrew Biggs's and Alicia Munell, which is getting rid of the tax benefits to the wealthy via 401k contributions. Oh, my puppies? All right. God bless. Love to your thoughts. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to buy my book. You can see all my books. You just go to Amazon.com. You type in your old buddy Josh Scanlon books, and you're going to see this first one comes up, Relax and Retire. Only got 71 reviews, my friends. You got to buy that sucker up. But look at this guy. Oh, I'm almost at 500 reviews, so give me a review there at Tax Bomb Your Retirement Account. Look at this guy. 446. Come on, man, give me up to 500 reviews. Retired with Wellington Fund. I haven't really pushed this so much is because I got off the Wellington train about 2 years ago. I'm kind of back on it now. They haven't. They're just stupid, paying lip service to stupid DEI crap. I don't think that's true. Then I got this guy right here, Strategic Money Planning, and I got my first and only fiction book. But I got other fiction books I'm thinking about. All right. God bless. Love your thoughts. See ya.